Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello. Welcome.
Hi.
I wasn't even talking to you. Oh, you was just saying hi to everybody else. That's
yeah.
Chris Potter. Editor of Pittsburgh City Paper. First day of summer, right?
Is it?
June 20th.
Oh, yeah. So this is the longest day of the year.
You know
it already
what?
feels that way for me.
Well,
frankly,
let me tell you,
I'll be
I was
honest.
stunned because I was awakened, unfortunately, about 4-something this morning, and it was already getting light.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, wait a minute, because this is daylight saving time.
Is it? I never
So
remember.
didn't we? It really is 3:30, isn't it?
No, that can't be right.
Spring forward.
I don't know. Isn't it?
So you said it was the longest day. So I'm telling you, it was
it's most
4-something.
daylight.
It was 4. The first number was 4, and there was light out there.
Yeah.
It was more light.
It's hard to put a kid down, too, because it's still bright out at like 9 o'clock. And so he's in his room, and you're like, you need to go to sleep right the hell now.
Right. So I had trouble getting back to sleep because I kept thinking, you need to come back.
I need to come in. Oh, maybe.
So I was thinking about, when before electricity and
Yes.
stuff,
Yes.
people got more sleep generally because you went with the,
The
sun up.
circadian rhythm or whatever.
yeah,
that
that's
is.
right. But so, wow, the difference between this day, the length of this day as opposed to a day, I guess, 6 months from now,
Yes.
is amazing.
It is.
Well, that's all I wanted to say. I was thinking that at 5 o'clock this morning.
That you were thinking, wow, it's amazing how much different this is really. Well, that's good for you. That's
Well,
nice.
and I was thinking about all kinds of things that were amazing and how some people attribute that to God and other people absolutely poo-poo that. And I can understand both sides, I think, although I think that the atheists are particularly, I don't know, in dangerous territory if they aren't willing to acknowledge that something beyond human reason or ability, intellect, is at work here. There's something arrogant about it, and I think we ultimately are such puny little nothings that to like say, well, because I can't understand this, then
Right.
well, so either the invention of a supreme being, which I think is a cop-out, or the absolute refusal to believe in something beyond our ken, I think is a cop-out too.
Well, I guess I'd say two things. One is Lynn Cullen has more profound thoughts before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. That's a lot of heavy lifting before your first cup of coffee.
Right, and that's why
Intellectually.
I'm really tired right now.
Oh, is that?
Yeah.
Basically, you shot the bolt before you even got out of bed, and now the rest of us just have to deal with the leavings. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh,
I don't know.
I don't know. It had something to do with atheists being arrogant. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's. Yeah, I guess if you had to look at arrogance, I mean, I guess I have less patience. Although I've known plenty
With
of
the self-righteous
yeah,
believers.
exactly. Although I mean, you
But
can certainly
anybody who's
certainly find self-righteous atheists as well. I mean,
But
I don't think
anybody who's
self-righteousness is
certain,
yeah,
right?
right, exactly.
Any
Yeah.
feeble little
Yes, I agree
human
with
being who thinks
with
they
that.
got something figured out is out of their cotton-picking mind.
Right.
Thank you very much. I'm glad
I'm
we
with
agree.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. So
So,
we've solved that problem.
yes. So,
The whole supreme being thing. I guess that about wraps it up for today's show.
God, we did that.
I want to
in
thank
4
our
minutes.
sponsors. I'm going to go off and get raptured. God, I'm about ready for that.
You are?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of that, I was listening to, what's his name? David Sanger? Does that name ring a bell?
Yeah, it does, but all of a sudden I can't think
Okay,
of why.
I think he wrote for the or maybe
That's
still
it.
does, the New York Times.
New York Times, right, yes.
And I think he's got a new book out, and I
Yeah.
think I was listening to him talk about it. And It is scary.
This is he's the national security.
That's right. Because
he's the one who all the leaks and everything, and people.
He's talking about the stealth. I think the book is about Obama sort of how he's changed the way America essentially goes to war, because he's suggesting that what covert action, which used to be a sidebar to war,
right,
is now the main game.
Right. Yeah.
So, and will continue to be covert action with cyber warfare and drones, things like that. That's where we're heading. And Obama has completely turned, and you can, there are parts of it where I can argue saying, yes, that's the right way to go. But the question comes up. We're not the only ones who are going to have access to this crap.
Right.
So at the point where some other country or entity starts doing drone attacks over here, well, we would immediately consider that an act of war.
Yes.
Correct? Mm-hmm. So
I feel like I was arguing this on the show just 2 weeks ago. Anybody out there remember that, or was I just dreaming it?
I do.
Okay.
But when you do the turnaround, you realize, you mean, wait a minute, they can do this to us?
Right, yes.
And they will.
Yeah.
So, but what's scary about it is that these drones, someone said that this is, I think it was Sanger, who said, we are right now at the Model T era of this kind of warfare. But because technology is moving so quickly, yiko.
Yeah.
In 10 years, God knows what's going to be going on, both through cyber war and I just thought, God, what a world our kids are getting themselves into.
It's going to be like...
Oh, my... It's like a science fiction movie.
It's going to be like a Fox network TV show, like Dollhouse, Welcome to the Dollhouse, or Dark Angel, or one of those dystopian things where they don't use enough light. Like, that's what the future is going to be like.
That is. And there's no... You know what? And there's no... That's why you said, you're saying bring on the rapture or something. Yeah.
That's a great photo that you just pulled up on your screen.
Yeah, I thought so too. My friend in Boston sent me this. It's a woman, I'm assuming, outside the state legislature in Lansing, Michigan, holding a sign pointing it at a male, saying, the sign says, "I didn't come from your rib. You came from my vagina."
Lynn Cullen, you are out of order. Can I just do that? Can I do that now?
Yeah,
Can I just gavel you down?
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
I love that. I love that. Like the whole write-up of that thing. I love the phrase "gavel." She was gaveled down.
Is that what they said? She was gaveled down?
I think that's what you like.
Out of order.
Gaveled down.
But she was also literally silenced, shunned.
Yes.
Refused to be recognized. I think. Yeah. And the other woman.
They all turned their backs on her in a ritual Klingon thing. Like happened to Worf when he joined the Federation or something. That's how they rolled in Lansing. Actually, all of those meetings all of those legislative sessions are conducted in Klingon. People don't. Well, people are like, "What's going on up there?" And it's it's obvious.
It'd make more sense in Klingon.
They all have names like. Come on, why? How do those people get on the ballot? That's what I want to know.
Okay, so here's something unbelievable. You got a Republican legislature. You've got a Republican governor who got in partially on his absolute promise to privatize state liquors. And even they can't do it.
Right.
They have admitted defeat.
Yes.
What is that?
Well, they've admitted they've lost this battle, but they'll be back in the fall.
Oh, well,
says Mike Terzai, because I'm sure that's exactly what all these legislators want to take up right before an election.
Oh, okay.
Is a hot button.
So you think they will? If Corbett will manage to pull this off?
No, I don't think. I don't think If by the fall he means before the election, then I think it's unlikely. If by the fall they mean in some sort of, lame duck session where they tend to do all their
dirty
miscreant
work.
stuff, then I guess it's more likely. But yeah, I just every time I read a story in the about this stuff in the Post-Gazette, I always just think, this was the basis of you endorsing that.
And that's what I thought of too.
And this is what you get. So
that's right. And
suck it up.
That's right.
Suck it up, John Block.
That's right. Yeah, for those who don't remember and were stunned when they saw the endorsement of the Post-Gazette for the Republican Corbett in the last gubernatorial election, that was the sole reason. The owner of the PG is just apparently obsessed with the Liquor Control Board, and
part of it is, of course, there's a financial motive for a newspaper like ours,
because they want
to get the advertising,
right?
Yeah. And I think part of it is just a personal thing for him. He's a bit of a wine snob, I think. So.
He's a wine snob, and he wants, but so he can. Well,
you can get plenty of good wine.
I'm sure he can. He can.
I was in there the other day, and they had like 4 different flavors of Mad Dog. So I don't know what his.
Okay, so you still paying no attention to Sandusky, huh?
You can't ignore it. I mean, because it's just everywhere. But I have not. I saw the thing with his wife, like, I never heard screams or whatever, which. Great alibi,
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's your character
she never
witness.
thought it was weird that her husband was always, having these strange friendships with little boys. Also, I did not hear this, but someone was telling me that his defense attorney, what's his name, Amendola, that Amendola was outside the courthouse speaking to reporters, and he said something about, I'm not telling you whether or not I'm putting Jerry on the stand. Hey, stay tuned or something. This is going to play out like a soap opera. Like, did he say all my children?
Yes, he was asked what kind of soap opera. At first he said General Hospital, and then he said more like all my children.
Jeez!
It's like he's not the attorney. It's like he's the late night talk show host doing a monologue about the very case that he's
It's like
trying.
Jon Stewart would have said something like that.
Exactly. It's just sort of like...
It's stay tuned. It's like a soap opera. All my children. Good God!
I mean, I'm sure there's a level at which every attorney has to sort of have a distancing thing, right? I mean, you have to do a job and whatever, and they probably, at the end of the day when they're relaxing over a drink, they probably tell jokes like that.
Gallows humor. Doctors do it too.
But you do that at the end of the day. You don't do that in the middle of the day when there are a bunch of cameras
in front of cameras. Jeez. Unbelievable. Yeah. So...
So now that I did hear, I don't know why. I haven't followed any other thing.
Somebody in a state of high dudgeon told me that yesterday.
Yeah, it's apparently true. It was
off the walls.
Yeah, one of my colleagues spotted it in the Harrisburg Patriot News, I think is where that was, and forwarded it to us. So that's why I saw that.
Well, I didn't see it anywhere in the PG today. Yeah. That's something, if I were doing a paper, I'd have that front and center, because it would, get people all exercised, and after all, isn't that what papers are for?
That's what media is all about.
Indeed. So,
rallying them.
There is a wonderfully interesting, I think, surprising story on the front page of the paper today about a new restaurant coming to the area.
Oh, God, yes.
You don't think this is weird?
I think it's very strange.
Okay. The new restaurant, ladies and gentlemen, sounds marvelous. I mean, it sounds like, and this is the one of the celebrity chefs in town who already has Salt of the Earth in Garfield and what's Pig and Chicken in
Union Pig and Chicken.
Union Pig and Chicken in East Liberty, and the hot dog place.
Yeah.
For those of you who aren't up on things, you're people who don't go into the scarier neighborhoods of Pittsburgh that are being revitalized. Right?
Yeah, I don't think they're terribly scary neighborhoods, but okay.
I just mentioned Garfield and East Liberty.
Yeah, but it's on...
I know, but those are changing. Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
Those are neighborhoods in transition.
It's not. Yes, transitional neighborhoods. And what's his name?
Kevin Sousa.
Kevin Sousa. And so he's got a 4th restaurant coming out. And amazingly, he's even moving his family so that they're going to live like 2 minutes from the restaurant. He can just go out of bed, get out of bed, and go up the street and start cooking. The restaurant is
It's in Braddock. Yeah.
Now, okay, so why are you, I would think, I mean, first of all, from a business point of view, this seems very risky. Most people don't want to go to Braddock. The people who live in Braddock generally wouldn't be out going to restaurants. There is no restaurant. There is no commercial kitchen of any kind in Braddock, PA.
That's right.
Since the hospital got imploded.
It was their cafeteria.
The cafeteria at the hospital was the only place you could, if you lived in Braddock, go and get something that you didn't make yourself. So he's going to do this. He's moving his family to a building a few blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
Is he just somebody looking for attention?
Well, no.
Well, what do you think? Why are you so sort of down in the mouth about it instead of cheering him on?
I mean, I am. It's like, it's one of those things. It sounds kind of crazy, but it
sounds very crazy. Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of the latest in an ongoing, effort by the mayor of Braddock, who has received plenty of media attention from City Paper and many other fine
publications,
outlets as well. John Fetterman. And, it's been going on for a few years that Fetterman has tried to attract, artists, sort of free thinkers.
And has. I mean,
to some extent. I mean, I think when you look at the census numbers or whatever from 2000 to 2010, it's pretty, there's really
no one's moving in.
Not a dent. Yeah, I mean, the population has dropped. Whatever.
But there's
a handful of people that he has definitely
including
done.
Including the local Tony Buba, who just had a retrospective in New York.
Yeah, although I think Buba lives in North Braddock.
No, he grew up in Braddock.
He grew up in Braddock, but I don't think
he just moved up to Braddock Heights.
Well, that's, yeah. I mean, that's different. That's like, moving from...
But his whole being and everything he does is Braddock.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that. So, and I think Tony's a fine guy, and I think John's a fine guy. And Kevin's, trying to do what he believes in as well, which I respect. I do think, there were some remarks in the that he made to reporters yesterday that I was just a little puzzled by. He said Braddock is... When I walked through Braddock, I got the vibe that I got from Lawrenceville 15 years ago. I think Braddock is where Lawrenceville was back then, and I just think
that's not true.
That's madness.
Lawrenceville did not look like Dresden after the bomb.
Yeah, you can't compare. The other thing too, and I just think this is like again, it's presumptuous of me because I've never opened one restaurant, let alone as many as he has, and all that stuff. But I mean, I had always been told that what makes a restaurant work is location, location, location. You cannot compare a Garfield, which is literally a stone's throw from Friendship, a couple of stones throw from Shady Side and from really affluent East End neighborhoods. You can't compare that to Braddock, which is just remote and hard to get to, and is only going to get harder to get to. For those of us who ride a bus in the months ahead, there's just no comparison between those things. That was sort of the first thing that jumped out at me. And I'll be honest, years ago, I can remember John Fetterman, the mayor, sort of rising to my consciousness and to a lot of other people's, even before he moved to Braddock, because he used to really take the piss out of Richard Florida. People may remember that Richard Florida was a CMU professor.
A guru.
And one of the things that Richard Florida would argue about is, well, if you want to revitalize communities, you've got to attract this creative class of, kind of hip knowledge workers and all that stuff. And when I heard about this thing, I'll have to confess that the first thing I thought is, if Richard Florida had proposed taking a high-end restaurateur and relocating him to Braddock, John Fetterman would have made fun of this idea. Like that's the first thing that hit me. Now, what has also been said is that Sousa plans to offer, I think, a 50% discount.
Yeah, they're going to put a little
Braddock
window there, so
they're going to do some stuff there.
That's right. They get the food for half price.
Yeah, and I'm sure
and they're going to give the kitchen over to a Meals on Wheels program based with the Lutheran Church, that will be able to. I mean, that's all like wonderful stuff. You can't say this is bad stuff, and he's got such a sort of following.
Yes, he does.
That he will be drawing people to Braddock.
I mean, the thing is, I don't know. But does he draw them? Sure, he will. I mean, I'm sure everyone is going to go to this restaurant
once.
Yeah, everybody's going to go to a restaurant, but it's just hard to imagine people like making this just because of the challenges. And I don't know if all the people, I saw, when the Post-Gazette first put this story up yesterday, there were a lot of Facebook comments. Wow, I'll sure be there or whatever. And I just don't know that it's going to be easy for people to make that part of their sort of weekly and monthly lives the way it is to go to Salt, which is literally just down the street or whatever.
Well, stay
and in
tuned.
any case, I mean, that's what I like to say about it. I mean, I wish the best for those guys. I hope it turns out because Braddock could, for God's sake, use a break.
What do you make of him moving there?
I mean, I think it's great. I mean, I think it's fine. God bless him for doing it.
Wow. I mean,
I myself wouldn't want to live that close to where I work because there's just. I used to live when I was in Pittsburgh, which is over on the south side. I lived 2 blocks from my office, and it was just like when you'd have like a snowstorm or whatever.
You were the only,
and I was
one
like the one person who didn't have an excuse for not coming in. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's just a part of me, but I guess you're running a restaurant; it's a different thing. So.
We should take a break.
Sure.
Okay. That's what we're going to do. I hope you stick with us because we'll be back in just a minute or two.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
You in the City and Hosanna House Summer Nights present Jazz Under the Stars, starring Najee, Friday, July 13th. 8 p.m. at the Sherwood Event Center in Wilkinsburg. Tickets available at Dorsey's, Stediford's, or charge by phone at 1-800-383-5760. Najee, live in concert July 13th. Proceeds benefit Hosanna House, a place called Hope.
Are you struggling with your mortgage payments? Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about your options. Or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
Vote now. Who will be the chosen one in Pittsburgh City Paper's annual Best of Readers poll and register to win a new iPad. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
There's a bunch of other.
Hey, we are back. Okay, so we were just talking about like this strange thing of being an activist chef.
That actually makes it sound awesome.
It does, doesn't it? Because that's what he is. He's an activist chef.
Activist chef.
I like that. Then in Pittsburgh, in City Paper, we have a big article. Why didn't you put her on the cover? That makes more sense. About the Pittsburgh's own winner of RuPaul's drag race. Is that what it's called? Yeah, drag race. Not Colleen Needles. She used to be an anchor at Channel 4. Sharon Needles.
So when you you said that, there was a scream that was my art director who was tempted to do just that, and the reason for it's a boring story, but essentially it just has to do with when certain images were available.
Well, I got to tell you,
how they look,
what you've got is 5 boring-looking white guys on the cover, which would not attract anybody. Seriously. Yeah. You know, they're even bald and wearing glasses. Excuse me.
Now you know the real story.
Yeah, right. And, I was no more inclined to pick this up than, seriously.
Thanks, Lynn. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm right. If you had Sharon Needles on the cover.
Yeah.
Well.
It was a difficult set of circumstances is all I'm going to say about it. Just, sometimes things happen internally that make it difficult to make a decision.
I think heads should roll over this.
They're not going to.
All right. You're stupid. Anyway, there's a fascinating story. It's a really good story,
It is a good
too.
story. Thank you for noticing that.
Well, yeah.
Thank you for
but
being willing to see past that superficial.
I only would have known about it if I'd somehow gotten beyond my aversion to picking
To white
up the
men?
paper
No.
with these boring guys on the cover.
Great. Anyway,
Okay.
would you like to talk about this?
So the story is called Dragged into Debate, and it's about Sharon Needles, and who won this RuPaul's Drag Race.
Yes.
And brought fame yet again to the city of Pittsburgh.
Indeed.
And then came home, and the Pittsburgh City Council honored her with a proclamation making whatever
June 12th.
that day,
Sharon
Sharon
Needles
Needles Day.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to say to that, big effing deal. I've had a Lynn Cullen Day.
No.
I've had a proclamation.
As far as I'm
If you had
concerned,
one,
every
they don't
day
mean
is
anything.
Lynn Cullen.
Yeah, but
Well, that's what they do. No, I mean, they do.
that's what they do. They make
proclamations.
people
It's
feel
nice.
good.
Yeah.
That's right. So, tell us about the story. This is written by Lauren Daly, and it's just really, I think, fascinating.
Yeah. So what? I think a lot of people have known about this for a while. I mean, Sharon Needles is controversial for reasons that go beyond what you might expect the controversy about Sharon Needles to be. I mean, obviously, there are going to be certain Christian types who object to the whole thing, but there has been sort of a long-running, kind of slightly beneath the surface series of concerns about Sharon's performances, sometimes trafficking in racial epithets, sometimes involving attire with the swastika on it, and so on and so forth. And a lot of this stuff has kind of been under a boiler. There's been some criticism from some national blogs. Huffington Post has done a few things, just sort of raising questions when she was actually on the show. Locally, some of the concern has been fairly muted, in part because we're all one big happy family here in Pittsburgh. But when City Councilor Patrick Dowd brought forward this proclamation, a lot of people got kind of upset about it, because now you're just kind of going
People
from
mostly in the gay community.
people. I mean, I certainly heard from people who were not gay, but who were sort of aware of it and upset by it. But yeah, certainly it's a very divisive issue within the community itself. And one of the people who we talked to for this, and people that we talked to did not want to go on the record because they didn't want to get caught up in this thing. It has been a difficult, a very sort of fractious debate. One of them said, look, part of the reason I'm not criticizing Sharon Needles more openly is because I don't want to feed into the
Anti-gay.
homophobia of the Christian types. I mean, he actually says at one point in the story, if this was a straight guy, it would be easier, which I think is sort of an oddly revealing statement in a way. But we did, we certainly did.
Protect your own if you're a minority. Not,
Yeah, you do, and I think that's which I think is But see, here's the thing: is being a minority is sort of a multivalent thing. There are all kinds of minorities, and what happens is you've got somebody who's sort of in this doing using the N-word, wearing a swastika or whatever. There are minorities at stake there as well, and their rights, and they certainly also have their own very ample history of victimization to contend with as well. So it gets into these really very complicated questions that we were sort of interested in. Dowd himself,
He's
people
the one
did
who
call
put
him. People did call him and express their concerns about it, and and he acknowledged that they had a point. And Dowd's take on it was, first of all, he professed not to have known this aspect of her performance. He just hadn't been aware of it. Apparently, he had never seen Drag Race as a show either. But what he said, and I think this is a defensible position, is when we do a proclamation, we're not honoring a person in toto. We're not, we're honoring the good that they do. And we can't necessarily vouch for, everything else or whatever. So it's just a very complicated set of issues. And this is not, one of the things that the article points out is it's not as if she's the only, drag queen to be sort of raising these kinds of questions. Drag queens often engage in, shocking displays.
That's what it's about.
And that's what it's about.
Pushing the envelope, as they say.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a question which the story doesn't resolve because I think I don't think it can be resolved in some ways. How you weigh against what Eric Shiner, the director of the Warhol, is one of the people quoted in there saying, it's important to have these kinds of transgressive displays because they force us to kind of confront these issues. I mean, I think that's valuable.
Right.
But on the other hand, you're not acting in a vacuum. You're confronting these issues at the expense of.
She appeared blackface in something?
Well, I think, and I think this is sort of one of the things. She appeared in, blackface implies, I think, that people, a very particular kind of, sort of, mammy kind of thing,
right,
minstrelsy kind of thing. What the representation here is that this was much more about, an actual artful, makeup presentation, and one of the drag queens in the piece says, how much it's the effort you put into it that makes all of the difference. I'm not sure that I agree with that, and I'm not sure that if I were black myself that I would find that a particularly compelling distinction. But I do think it's it's not blackface in quite the way that people probably think about when they hear that word.
Okay, well,
but yeah, she definitely did.
What does PJ in his email mean when he says, "Yeah, but Lynn Cullen Day never sounded like a day given to bad advice to IV drug users"? Does she's done that?
I can't speak to I'll profess my ignorance of Sharon Needles.
Well, here's a quote from her.
Yeah.
She totally is not apologizing one bit, doesn't back off at all.
I don't think you'd be Sharon Needles if you if you backed down from things.
Okay. She says about her critics, they have all this angst and all this energy, and we're living in southwestern Pennsylvania where there is some real hate, some real fucked up shit going on, and they're focusing on a social commentary midnight clown whose drag performance they are free to ignore.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a good point.
It is, but that's the thing.
There's good points all around.
There is, but I guess the flip side of that, and this is a constant, as a straight white male, I guess maybe I've just sort of been exposed to the counter argument a bunch of times, which is you may think this is not real, right? I mean, she's basically getting to decide what's real hate and what's not real hate. But if you're on the receiving end, if you're the one who is confronted with a swastika, that reminds you of a painful history, or you're the one who's hearing the N-word and all that stuff, that it's not for Sharon to say that isn't real for you. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of presumptuous. I mean, it's presumptuous of her to say, well, there's real hate, which I'm going to define, and then there's what I'm doing. I mean, of course, her intentions matter, but they're not the be-all, and they're not the end game. There's also the feelings of the people in the audience there, both, within that room or whatever, for her shows, which she's quite right. People don't have to go to. But now at this point, I mean, she's a celebrity. There's a different kind of signification to what she does. What's that?
There's little question that Needles takes pleasure in tromping on social norms. In a music video for a song she titled 412724, Whore,
right.
Needles takes the role of a prostitute walking the streets of Pittsburgh while singing a song in which she regales the viewer with tales of giving blowjobs to various local celebrities and having sex at landmarks including Frick Park and the Warhol. There are also references to various enclaves in Squirrel Hill and Uptown where, good heavens, their horse dicks make me gag. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh, dear God.
Yes.
Oh, jeez. Well, it's a little too raw for me.
Yeah.
A little too raw.
Yeah.
But that's what she traffics in, huh?
I mean, that it's part of the act, and this I will say the celebrities include
who would she give him blowjobs?
Various. I mean, it's all.
I know it's all in time. Yeah. Who gets mentioned?
Certain city officials and county officials, athletes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
Exactly. Really. Well, yeah. So, yeah. I mean,
Wow. So I'm.
She's unconstrained by political correctness, I think, would be the.
Well, Sokolowski will be on tomorrow. It'll be interesting.
It'd be interesting to hear what he has
his
to say about it.
His take on it.
I mean, his successor at the Warhol, Eric Shiner, is a friend and admirer, I think, of Sharon's work. So
Sharon complains, I guess, and it says in the article she didn't want to answer many questions from Lauren or anybody else because local media totally paid no attention to her whatsoever until she won this national television.
Yeah, and that's I would say that's a legitimate complaint, certainly as it applies to City Paper.
Yeah,
we've never written. I don't think we've ever really done anything about the drag scene in this town.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah,
how come?
It's an oversight. I don't know. I mean,
well, then maybe
it's one of those things. I think it's one of those things where, so much of what we do is event driven. If it's in the news section, it's about kind of what's happening now. If it's in the art section, it's about here's a show that's coming through town. Da 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 da. There's not really a place to do something that happens kind of every week in that way. I think that's part of it.
Okay. Well, Tim writes.
Oh, Sharon.
Duh.
Okay.
Sharon Needles.
Oh, sharing needles. Yes.
Equals
right.
Sharon Needles.
Yes, of course.
Like sharing needles.
Yes.
Oh, I never thought
You didn't
of
get that? You're kidding me.
Oh my gosh.
Well, then why didn't you get when he said something about IV drug use?
Because it said something about advice or whatever, and I just didn't understand.
I just thought her name was Sharon Needles.
No,
they're all
drag names are all like that. There's a few others that are fairly interesting as well.
I know I know Ida Bagel.
Yeah, right. One of Sharon's frequent onstage cohorts is Alaska Thunderfuck. So there's
Jesus Christ.
So, folks, you won't be seeing Lynn Cullen at the Blue Moon anytime soon for their next House of Haunt show.
No, that's too much for me. Anyway, PJ writes, she is, for now, a more pertinent real Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I think.
Well, like Lady Gaga is a cleaned-up kind of version of a drag queen in a way. Although you think?
She's actually
a woman. But who can keep track of any of this?
Who can keep track of who's a woman and who's not?
No, I'm serious.
I will say, stories like this are difficult to edit simply because of
you don't know pronouns.
The pronouns are a little tricky to figure out.
Okay, so like Sharon Needles, like right now, might be out, let's say, having some breakfast at a restaurant, and is not in drag and looks like a guy, right?
Yes.
The guy that he is.
Yes.
What? Okay.
So at that point, the general rule that you follow, or that we've tried to follow, and that papers are advised to follow by groups, advocacy groups, is to use the pronouns that are consistent with how the person you're writing about presents themselves. So
at any given time, she can be a he. Or
but our feeling with this story was, since this is really about Sharon as a performer, as this persona, this person, that we would use female pronouns throughout the story. I guess we have a call.
Let's hope they can hear us. We've been having trouble. Hello?
Hey, you two. It's PJ from Greensburg.
Oh, hi, PJ.
What's up?
Hey, I can barely hear you again. I think, there was that whole deal with Sharon Needles. As of right now, I think she's amazing, or he's amazing. There we go again with the...
She.
And my comment about her being a more pertinent Lady Gaga, I mean, there was a whole controversy. Yes, Lady Gaga is a female, but there was a whole controversy, or a whole, thing going on with whether she was actually a guy in drag and the whole deal. She's like a homogenized version of Sharon Needles to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the presentation, I know you can't hear us, that's correct. Hey, thanks, PJ. Okay, we got to get Jess on it.
I think
on it.
It's great, though, that Lady Gaga is now a homogenized presentation of something. You know what I mean? Like, that's not an accusation often lodged against Lady Gaga, I suspect.
No, but if you were just looking at, here's Lady Gaga performing and here's Sharon Needles, you'd be hard-pressed to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's odd. Look what's happened to our culture. What is going on?
Oh, my God. Now Lynn's about to come out as a cultural conservative, apparently. This is it, the bridge you cannot pass. We all reach it sooner or later.
I've always been somewhat, well, don't we all find ourselves having to stretch a bit?
Yeah.
Throughout our lives?
Yeah, which is good.
But is it conceivable that at some point you say, I can't do that? Or do we as progressives always have to go?
No, I mean,
with the flow.
I don't know. I'm sort of reminded as the guy who edits Dan Savage every week. I think for the vast majority of Americans, Dan Savage represents the outlier of what of what they can tolerate. And I can tell you that there are people in the trans scene, not least among them, who think that Dan is repressively conservative in terms of his orientation to those issues. So yeah, I mean, there's clearly. There are clearly for all of us various kinds of comfort levels that we have to adjust with. But I don't think that in itself is particularly dispositive of anything. You can go back 50 years ago and think about what people were comfortable with and not comfortable with, and
that's true.
And that has discomfort has been used to carry out acts of repression that I think we now rightly recognize as being inhumane.
Well, some of us, recognize.
I meant we, you, and me.
Oh, yeah, because we're...
Yeah, screw the rest of those people.
That's right.
You and I alone will decide the right, Lynn Cullen.
Well, I had this thought that I wanted to share, and it just went right out my head. Oh, I know. So did you get a lot of reaction to last week's cover that was a takeoff of that Newsweek cover with the woman breastfeeding and it showed Governor Corbett breastfeeding.
Speaking of putting people in a place of discomfort, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay,
no, actually, it's funny. I really thought I'd get more angry feedback than I got. I really thought I basically heard from one person who called in and was really upset.
He thought it was in bad taste, you mean?
Yeah. He was just like, why are you always trying to tear the country down? It was like that. It was really like that. It was a really great phone call to get, actually. And I was like, because that's what I do. I'm the media, buddy. But no, actually, very positive feedback. Apparently, I've been told, I can't confirm this for myself, but Democrats in the state House made a bunch of copies of this image and were distributing them on the floor.
I don't doubt it.
So yeah, no, there was buzz. There was all kinds of chatter about it. We only heard from the governor's office in a sort of back channel kind of way, and the feeling I got was more that they were wounded rather than angry. I think it was just so. I mean, it's pretty easy not to take us seriously. I think for Governor Tom Corbett. So I don't think they wasted a lot of time.
Well, but still, I mean, that your paper is visible and out there all the time, and so that picture was.
And since we did that, the Scranton Times Tribune had an illustration that featured, and I think it was a painting of the birth of Venus. I think it was by Botticelli. It's the one with Venus sort of on the clamshell or whatever.
Right. Clamshell.
The eggshell. And it basically also had Corbett with sort of like a breast-logical thing happening there, and so I think again, City Paper defining deviancy downward. That's our contribution.
Well, I'm proud of you
to the media scene.
I am.
But it actually interests me the extent to which people who like that image are really, 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 really mad at Tom Corbett. I was surprised by it for some reason, and I realize that sounds stupid, but there's just a level of because he himself tries. I think it's because he himself tries so hard to sort of seem above the fray. And I think people are just viscerally really pissed off at him. Personally.
Well, apparently they are, including even Republicans, because he's not being enough of a hard ass, I guess. And so he's. What? He's about as unpopular as a person can be. I
mean, I heard, there was this talk about it, and one of the pieces of feedback I got from somebody who's fairly well placed in the Harrisburg scene. He works as a lobbyist, and he said, among the people who are angry at Tom Corbett, actually, and this may surprise you, are business leaders, and what they're upset about, and this may surprise you even more, is the no tax. The no tax
on
the and the reason for that is, and it's not necessarily that they care about some of the stuff that you and I care about social spending and welfare and things like that. They care about when I put my shipment of goods on the back of the truck and send it out the door, is the bridge going to collapse under?
There you go. Right.
And they are just and this is the kind of thing where he's not doing anything about it. He was asked, what are you going to do about the crumbling infrastructure? And he was like, well, my predecessor didn't do anything about it for 8 years, so what do you expect? And he's really like, these problems don't tend to get better. Bridges don't spontaneously heal themselves.
No,
and the longer you wait, the pricier it gets to fix it. And there's just this real sense of impatience with him, even among the business community, to a very large extent, is benefiting from these things on the one side of the ledger, but feels on the other side of the ledger that it's,
that he's not doing basic maintenance.
He's just not, because he has hamstrung himself. And of course, for Corbett, and I think this is the interesting thing, as bad as he may be, it could always be worse. He could be Scott Walker. He could be Chris Christie. He could be one of these jerks. And I think part of his problem is he is trying to walk this line between the Tea Party set in his own party, and then this sort of, saner, although I'm sure I still disagree with him 97% of the time, business wing of the party. And he's trying to sort of figure out
welcome to Mitt Romney's world.
Exactly. He has the same problem. It's really the very, very similar kind of situation.
Well, I don't know what you do.
I don't
you can't win without the loons.
In that party, you cannot win without the loons. That's right.
Right, so they constantly have to pander to him, and then the business guys who are all business,
right,
who don't share all these crazed social views.
Although, you lay down with a dog, you wake up with fleas,
That's right?
I mean,
Indeed.
It's hard to have sympathy.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I got to put my flea medicine on my cats. I forgot. Thank you.
Take some yourself, it sounds like.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, we have another
break.
Quick break, and we'll be back. Chris Potter and moi.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to BergBargains.com for great deals on tickets to the City Theater, Symphony, History Museum, and the Carnegie Museums. Check out this week's big deal featuring 50% off tickets to the Carnegie Science Center. BergBargains.com, Pittsburgh's only online deal site where the deals don't expire. BergBargains.com. Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
Gustavo and Vella wants to thank all of southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vella usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvella@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okay, we're back. Did you see this thing that Joe Manchin?
Oh, yeah.
You did.
Not going to the
Democratic National Convention. Manchin and he's Democratic Senator, Democratic Governor of West Virginia, and also one of the congressmen, not going. And because West Virginia is so racist. Excuse me. It's racist. What the hell else could it be when a felon behind bars almost beats Obama? When Democrats go
let's be fair. Obama beat that guy 60-40. That's a big margin. If he beats Romney by that much, you'd call it a landslide, wouldn't you?
Oh, dear God, dear God.
And he's not alone. It's a couple of the other West Virginia delegation who will not be going to...
Well, I would imagine Obama will not be going to West Virginia then either.
Yeah,
and
I mean, what's the point?
What? Jeez.
Yeah. There's also an argument that, the coal industry has its own grievances with the EPA and the Obama administration, and that this too is part of the
Jay Rockefeller's going. He's a Democrat.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Ridiculous. I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah. I mean, what can you do? It's West Virginia.
Well,
nice. I mean, I've met plenty of nice folks there, but oh boy.
Oh yeah, you got that right. Yeah, but you say that, and where's the mark? Just because there's a state line, near Waynesburg there, it doesn't.
Oh yeah.
Welcome. This is West Virginia.
Yeah. The Paris of Appalachia is.
That's right.
As Brian O'Neill has called it.
That's correct. Okay. Well, geez, I don't know if I have anything else to say.
Huh? I get to go home early now. No, look, you've got a bunch of stuff that's all...
Nah, it's not good.
It's all... but you highlighted it.
No, but I just don't
How could it not be good if you didn't... If you
Okay, so they're saying this is an article about how, and I know this is a no-brainer, that that the greatest performers, both athletic, musicians, whatever, comedians, actors, believe it or not, they experience anxiety before even the professionals, before there's levels of anxiousness. And so this is an article about how people who have too much anxiety are debilitated by that, but people who have too little, who are just too, man, it's okay, just don't get worked up, also don't perform well.
So you're looking for that neurotic sweet spot.
That is correct. That's correct. And
you're right. That was a terrible article. Why did you even bring that up?
Well, I do have I've told this story before, but I have a story that absolutely relates to this. Because, I've told people, and they say, what? I become an anxious wreck when I have to give a speech, when I have to write a speech, which I do, by the way. And they would think, but you've done it. You do that for 40, 50 years. Come on. Still do. Yeah. And they're surprised by that.
Is that because just the bodies in the room with you there freak you out in a way that
No, I think it's because I want to do it right. And you're never assured that you're going to. Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? So you get this little... And that's part of it's also an adrenaline rush. That's adrenaline that gets put out there, right, when you're anxious? Yeah. So that's part of what makes performers like performance, is this sense of being
so you get hooked on
at risk.
Yeah. It's like an extreme sport as a career, sort of.
Exactly. So I have a story that I could tell.
Please, by all means.
And my apologies to the audience members who have heard this before. And if you start thinking, oh, I've heard that before, I'll stop.
I'll listen patiently.
I'll cease and desist. No. Because, I keep hearing the same stories from people all the time. Friends, Oh, did I tell you that? And you're thinking, it's just because we're getting old and they don't remember they told me.
So you should tell your story.
Okay. So I had an opportunity.
I've heard this before. This is going to be that story where you have the opportunity and it doesn't go the way you think. No, it's fine.
I was actually, somebody was interested in doing a pilot for a show, talky kind of show, using me and one of the ESPN anchors, whose name I swear I cannot remember. It wasn't Keith Olbermann.
Right.
This is way back when. So, there was some interest by syndicators in this idea, and I was told that I would go to, I think it was Chicago, where we were going to film a pilot-y kind of thing, and then all of a sudden there was like a big game here, and the ESPN guy was coming in to cover it. So I was told, hey, we're just going to do it. We're going to do it over at WTAE TV and blah, 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 and we can do it Saturday afternoon. So I thought, oh, okay. And I realized that I was a nervous wreck about this, and that I was so afraid, because when I get really nervous, I my mouth goes dry. I get, it's embarrassing. The same what happens to anybody, and I just become, and I could tell that was I just knew that was going to happen. So I called this wonderful guy who was a doctor at Children's Hospital who used hypnosis.
Oh, no.
And okay. I told him the problem. I said, so I was wondering if you could come over Saturday, around 1, could you come to my house around 1, hypnotize me so that I'm calm and relaxed so that I can do this thing? And he was such a sweetie. He said, yeah, absolutely. So he came to my house. I remember I was lying on the couch in the living room, and he was sitting in a chair, and he hypnotized me. And he told me how I was going to be so relaxed.
Oh, no.
This is going to be so easy.
Oh, no.
And then he did his thing, and he finished up, and I thanked him profusely. You never know if it's going to work, but whatever. Anyway, I think it was at 4 o'clock that afternoon that I was supposed to be at TAE. So I wandered out into the backyard and got in my little hammock there and absolutely fell asleep. I did wake up in time, but I thought, shit. And, so there the anxiety level went up, which was good. So I got all dialed up, and I ran over to Channel 4 and made it. And then we start doing the thing. And I think I'm being just fine. God knows I was not nervous. I was doing it just fine. And the producer, the guy whose idea this was, who was really into it, came running into the studio from the control room, and he said, that's great, but Lynn,
where's the energy?
Yeah, right. Where's the energy? I wasn't being the Lynn he was. I wasn't being myself. I was like, yeah, man.
Lynn's not here, man.
No, Lynn. Man, that guy was a good hypnotist.
Apparently, too good.
So, actually, the thing actually went forward another level. This was going to be, it was the Tribune Company that was interested in syndicating it. And you know how these things go, the guy who was interested in doing it, all of a sudden, he gets canned. There goes my pilot.
Oh.
But that's what happened.
Is there tape of it anywhere?
No.
It's too bad.
I can't even remember what the premise was.
Yeah, so was it scripted or was it
No, the two of us were sitting it was like two anchors sitting at a thing, and then there would be something that would play, and we would
talk about it
or something. So it was
like a Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I don't remember.
You and an ESPN person, though.
Yeah.
It seems like a strange.
It was odd.
Pairing.
And he didn't seem so hot to me either. I don't know. I don't remember who the hell was that. And isn't that odd that I don't remember things like that?
Yeah.
Although I do know the guy whose idea was to produce, so I could call him.
You should find out.
Say, who the hell was that?
And maybe he has a copy of the
And
tape,
what was
too.
the idea? Oh, God. Of me looking glassy-eyed? Well, I don't... God. So when I read this article, that's all I could think about. Because I would have been too much the one way if I hadn't sought some help. But he got me too far the other way.
It's asking a lot for the guy to be able to fine-tune your angst.
Well, they said, too, that people like me, and I don't know if you're like this, people like me who like risk, who can only perform when there is some risk, are also the kind of people who, if they have an assignment to do something, like write this damn speech I have to write, wait until the last minute. And they're wrecks for weeks, thinking, I got to do this. But you don't do it until you reach a level of such anxiety, and in fact, where you have to do it. Were you like that?
I'm somewhat like that. I don't think I'm as bad as. No, I used to.
Bad.
Yeah, no, I'm not like that.
Well, that's good. Because you're on deadline. I mean, people who live on deadline have to have that anxiety going all the time. No?
Yeah, the problem is then I just learned to ignore it. Again, that scream you heard was my art director. Poor Lisa, she suffers.
So that must be hard to be the editor. Because you call the shot eventually, right? Oh, here's, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Being the guy the decider.
I am the decider.
Okay, Jared of CMU writes, Manchin will switch to Republican if the November elections create a...
That's his prediction.
His prediction is if the November elections were to go all the way to
50-50.
a tie in the Senate.
Which is quite possible.
Oh, my God.
That Manchin would
switch to Republican.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if that happened.
Oh, my God. I can't imagine a more horrible scenario.
Oh, I could.
Does he have the courage? That would take some serious guts. You don't think?
Why would it take guts?
It would take guts because you'd go down in history as a jerk. You don't think? What?
History?
Who cares about history?
Conservatives don't study history.
Okay. This wasn't.
I did notice that a fear of what the history books would say changed, for example, the actions of the previous president. He did seem overly concerned with how history would regard him.
God almighty. Okay, so next week we'll be talking about the Supreme Court health care ruling.
Yeah, probably.
And I think it's not going to be...
Oh, yeah. So you saw this thing with Scalia in his new book that came out,
Yes, I did.
Right? Where he basically...
Scalia has a
ruled
book
against
just
himself,
out. Yeah.
In a way that's highly suggestive of how that's going to go. So, yeah, it's a mess.
Well, but his vote was a foregone conclusion. It's the person...
actually, I don't think it was.
Oh, right. They were saying that maybe because
of this precedent, he had affirmed this Wickard ruling in 1937, which is essentially the defining ruling that set what Congress could do under the Commerce Clause, and what Congress can do under the Commerce Clause is pretty much anything it wants in terms of regulating economic activity. Right. He upheld that rationale in a decision a few years ago, and so there were attorneys who thought he might actually be the surprise vote in favor of this, because they would feel no matter what else motivates Scalia, a fidelity to his own ego, might convince him to uphold this thing, but it seems like that's unlikely to happen. And by the way, we should say that just because he said something in his book, he could easily rule the other way around next time around if he wanted to. He doesn't
surprise you too many times. I mean, we know where he's at.
Oh no, I think what it comes down to is that for a justice like Scalia, there are times when he's perfectly willing to expand Congress's power to do things when it does things he wants them to do.
That's right.
So
he's totally politicized that.
So so there's no real philosophical principle underlying this. It's just he uses whatever principle he wants to.
So now the Supreme Court is essentially. I mean, well, never mind. God help us.
Yeah. Well,
that's the end of that.
It was nice while it lasted. As was this show.
Kind of, sort of, a little bit. Hey, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, sure. Tom Sokolowski tomorrow. I'll be very curious to hear what he has to say about
Sharon Needles. Okay, well, tune in. That's all you have to do. Enjoy this blistering hot first day of summer. Stay cool. And, Sokolowski tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.